Welcome back to When the Call Hits Home. My name is Ashlee Gethner. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I'm a child of a police officer. So, what you will find different about this episode is that I am without my amazing co-host, Jennifer Woosley, who is also a child of a police officer. But I'm without her. She gets the day off today, which is well deserved. We get to take, I think that's the beauty of having two co-hosts doing this, is that we get to take some time off here and there. But really, why we decided to do this episode is because Jennifer and I recognize we would not be able to do any of this if it weren't for our fathers. So, for both of them being police officers, it's super important for us to not only learn from them, but let them know how much we do appreciate them, allowing us to continue our adventure of what it was like for us as a child. And really, it wouldn't be possible without them. So, she gets the day off. However, in the future here, you will get an episode with just her and her father, where today you are going to get me and my dad. So it's going to be really cool. I'm excited about this opportunity. I'm very excited to interview my dad and to learn a little bit more from him and to let you guys into my life and what it was like for both of us. So my dad is Craig Nieft. He did 29 years as a police officer, and I think he's going to be really excited to share his story. So again, welcome back to When the Call Hits Home. And we're excited to share with you today. So, Dad, welcome to When the Call Hits Home. If you want and you're open to it, tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to becoming a police officer.
Well, my name is Craig Nieft. I'm 57 years old, been retired for 7 years.
It's been 7?
7 already. That goes fast.
That went really fast.
I'm happy I got 7 in already. I started thinking about becoming a police officer when I was working security at Woodfield Mall, and always wanted to help people, always wanted to be in a first responder role. Actually wanted to be a paramedic prior to being a police officer. And of course, I stood in the wrong line. I should have been a paramedic. But no, being a police officer was good. Being a copper was good to me and my family, and it was a good job. It was satisfying, and I felt like I was doing something to help people.
So there is a statistic out there, if you don't mind me sharing that, a lifespan of a first responder after retirement is typically 5 years. So you beat that statistic. However,
I did beat that statistic, but I did run into a little heart attack.
You did have a heart attack.
That happened a couple years ago now. 2 years almost.
That's 2 years this, I think.
Yes.
Right. But, and how sad to know that that's so common for all of our first responders.
Oh, it's unbelievable. That's why nowadays I guess the new police officers have to stay till they're 55 or put 25 years in. And that's sad because then they don't get to experience their retirement.
Well, and what people don't recognize is that the reason that happens is because of how high stress the job is. And so those negative stress hormones are constantly in your guys' body, which is a great thing for the job because it helps you stay alive, right? And it helps you do the things you need to do to make it home every day, but it's not so good long term.
Right.
And there's not so much help for people after the career to realize that, hey, we got to take care of ourselves to make sure these things don't happen.
Yeah, because you never think about that during your career.
No.
Never crosses your mind. You just deal with it, and that's that.
Right, exactly. So how long were you a first responder before you became a parent?
I think a year. I was a parent before I was a first responder, I think for about a year. And everything, I had all the stress factors. I got hired as a police officer. I bought a house. I got married, and I had my first kid. So those 4 stressors were like, boom. But I did know that I wanted to have a career so I could raise a family and have health insurance and be able to pay for things. So I just did my best and made it through the academy, and the Chicago Police Academy is where I went. And it was a Metro class. 1988 is when I went through that class. It was a little difficult. I mean, there's some tough times, but that's what gets you ready for the job.
Yeah. So you didn't even know the career prior to becoming a parent. So for you, you were just right in the hustle and bustle.
Right. I was thrown in the fire. Here we go.
Yeah.
Deal with it.
Okay. Then you went on, so that was Brittany. We're just gonna call her out right now. That was Brittany.
Brittany.
And then you went on to have Katie and then myself.
Correct.
Did you ever recognize as you got going in your career, did you ever recognize a change like in terms of parenting, or did you ever feel like the career had
Know that they're going to be held to a higher standard. They just think we're regular kids, but you're held to a higher standard. And I didn't want to, I didn't want to be embarrassed. I didn't want to, I wanted to make sure that you guys were good people, and we had to be.
is there fear? Is there fear behind some of that of like your children not turning out to be good
Absolutely.
people after you kind of learn how people can be
Absolutely.
through the lens of the job,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
With you go to these calls and you see and you deal with kids that want to run away and kids that are starting to do drugs and kids that just don't listen to their parents. And it was a fear. You're always like, we cannot be this way. And I don't want to go home to a family that isn't, held to a higher standard. That's all.
So one thing that I do remember when I was a kid is that at home, right, like if we did something wrong or we didn't do it correctly or what have you, right? Like say we weren't pleased with our stuff or we got in trouble, we were disrespectful, whatever. And there was consequences that came from that. I do remember mom vaguely saying over and over again, like, you can't treat your daughters like the criminals you arrest on the street. Do you feel like that was something that was hard to turn off? Or like, so from my perspective, I always kind of see it as like when you're patrolling, you have to stay in control of the situation. So for you, one thing that really works for you is because you're a pretty big man, like you're built bigger. And so like fear, right? Like instilling fear in the people that you were working with who were maybe becoming uncooperative, most of the time put them back in the right place.
Right.
Right? Like it wouldn't have to go any
Well,
further.
you always had to have and take charge of the situation.
Right.
That's above and beyond, because what happens when you don't, and I'm sure
Right.
90% of officers will tell you that bad people start taking advantage of you and people get hurt.
Correct.
So I always kept that line of thought, and maybe not so much, again, maybe worried about like, if I heard something that you girls did that was not right, I'd be like, no, let's nip this in the butt.
Yeah.
And don't let's, and
Right.
then maybe I was perceived as you're being too hard on the girls, or you're,
That's
not.
true.
So I was like, no, I'm just making sure that the girls don't end up
Right.
like what I have to work with a lot of times. That's
Right.
all.
That's fair. I think that's super fair. Because I would see that being super like hard as an adult, right? Now that I'm aware of all these different situations, that's hard to turn off, in my opinion. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I think that that's a huge part of what comes home from the job. It's just all day a certain way. How does one person switch and turn that off?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I think I look at it as a good thing, because then I'm not good, or
Yeah,
that
yeah,
our family
sure.
isn't embarrassed, or I mean, things, I understand that, but I just always wanted to one step ahead of that and make sure that everything was, okay
Yeah,
in our family.
I think that's pretty fair and accurate. Was there ever a call that you felt impacted your parenting? I know of two. So I have to call you out because I know of two.
I mean, there was calls that involved children that
Yeah,
were murdered by their own parent,
right.
things like that, and there were accidents where I saw some bad things in a little, toddler chair strapped in the back of and it was not good. But you always had to put that in its at work, and then
Yeah.
maybe you got an extra squeeze at home and you didn't even know it.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say. I think there was one time that I actually knew that you had something bother you. And I'll put this out there as like a little bit of a trigger just because I don't in case anyone's listening, that isn't comfortable with this, like it was an incident where a adolescent had died by suicide. Because I think that they specifically got into an argument with their dad.
Ah, yes.
And that was one time that I remember you coming home, and I very much so remember you saying, "Hey, if we ever fight, if we, I'm yelling or whatever, just please know that I always love you. Like, please don't do something like that." And so but I remember that day being kind of shocked because that was the first time that you opened up to us about something that had happened on the job like that and seeing it impact you. I do remember the death of those little children too impacting you, but talk about it with us. I just knew something had happened.
Bad, yeah.
Yeah. How did you decompress? Like, how did you turn that switch off when you came home to decompress after seeing scenes like that?
I think I just, realized that the 14-year-old boy
Yeah.
stepped in front of a train and they
Right.
knew it. And
Right.
and of course, like you said, I'm a bigger guy, so a lot of times the department utilized me to help,
Yeah.
remove the bodies. And yeah, the dad came out that day and he was screaming his son's name, and it was just I just plugged my ears actually and walked away because you can't even fathom that. You're not thinking like, oh my God, I can't believe this just happened. But again,
Yeah.
you compartmentalize it and you have to move on with your day.
One thing that I think I noticed for you, like you growing up, is that you were really good at staying with your hobbies. So you love to fish, you love to hunt, you love football. You love all those things. And I think that that is something that really your resilience throughout your career is that you didn't move away from those things, right? Like you still did them, even though and stuff like that, you still engaged with them.
Right.
And I think that really helped you process those bigger incidents and find an outlet, honestly.
Right. Right. Well, and that's one thing I always tried to stress with some of my coworkers that I know lived as a police officer.
Right.
I worked as a police officer. That was my job.
Right.
When you start living and you start
Pretty much
thinking,
identifying, right? Like that's the whole,
identify, then that's when you lose control, man. You can't, you gotta, you gotta keep it as worked as a police officer. And then when you get home and the things, because I do realize now that after retirement, what that's it.
yeah.
Nobody, there's no statue of me at the station.
There
The
should
door
be.
shut
There should be.
and the ID card didn't work anymore. And I love hunting with my dogs and I love fishing and I love my grandkids to death and I love my kids, and that's what life is about. You got to realize what life is about, and your goal basically is what I tell these young kids is make sure you keep your pension. Don't do nothing stupid where you lose your pension,
Yeah.
because
Well, and I think that this could probably go down a rabbit hole and we don't have to go down it, but I do think that that's hard for these officers these days. There's so many obstacles that can
oh,
happen. So, well, and that's actually a really good topic, though, not going completely down that rabbit hole, but in terms of your career impacting us as a family at home, I know that I was super anxious about you being a police officer and certain things. I wasn't so as a kid, but I was during Hurricane Katrina.
you didn't want me to go.
Yeah, so background, they asked my dad to go because if I'm remembering correctly, I was pretty young, but there was gang violence happening or
Oh,
um
it was just chaos,
chaos, yeah.
chaos, and
Yeah.
yeah, and actually they didn't ask me to go, but I was going to volunteer.
But
And
they had a group that
yeah,
went
you're
from
right.
your department.
Apartment, yes.
Yeah.
And they said, and you emphatically, you cried, you said, Dad, don't go. You can't go there. And I mean, I understand that. That's got to be tough for a child of a first responder. Like this is danger, you don't if there's any danger regular going to
Correct.
work. You kind of like, oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
You work in the north side of town, it's kind of quiet, but when that happens, something like that happens, you're like, holy mackerel. Yeah, yeah. I don't want
Yeah.
my dad to go and get in the midst of all that because I don't want something bad happening.
Yeah. And the second time for me was obviously as I got older. And then when I was in my master's program, and I spoke about this in previous episodes now, but just recognizing, hearing all that stuff in terms of the world and recognizing that people didn't like police was a really big deal to me because I just personalized it. Like I was like, well, that's my dad. Sorry, being super fearful towards the end of your career. I was like, okay, you can retire now. Okay, you can retire now. Any day now. Like, please just be done. So I do remember that a lot and
And
that having an impact on me personally.
that was probably the hardest part of the end of my career
Yeah.
was I guess, frankly, the lack of respect and I always was like, wait a minute, I always respected the police and people that I know like respected them and then towards the end of my career it almost became a game or something to try to rattle a police officer or try to put them down or
Oh,
try to do something where you're like, well, I thought I was always taught you just listen to them and try,
yeah.
trust
Well,
them.
but I think that speaks to your integrity, because I think that was something you held at a very high regard as a police officer.
Absolutely.
And so it was just honestly at that point compromising your values.
Right.
And towards the end, I think it was just hard for you to feel like you uphold those things that you used to always have. Right. So I really tested your integrity, whether it be from the public or your own department, I'm be honest,
Right.
which is kind of sad, right? That's
Yeah.
a hard thing. I think organizational aspects of working within police departments are really complicated.
Right.
It can have a big impact. Was there ever something in parenting? So this is kind of reverse. So we talk a little bit about the job as pertains to parenting, but was there ever something parenting wise? I'm not sure. Approach it differently. What do you think?
No, I mean, I knew I had six sets of eyes that were, keeping an eye on me that I knew I never wanted to let down and I couldn't afford to let them down. And so I just made sure that I did everything to the best of my ability. I tried to be safe. I tried to be, obviously I was fair. I never had to look over my shoulder and worry about not being a fair officer or anything like that. But not really. I mean, as far as affecting me, I just didn't want to let you guys down. I didn't want to
Yeah,
let anybody down.
right, right. And so this kind of feeds into my next question. Did you ever notice an impact on your profession, like the profession itself, onto us as a family as a whole?
No, not really. I mean, I think you guys were pretty good at accepting the fact that I was a police officer and that things sometimes happen bad and you guys were pretty understanding, you know, with the whole thing and knew that yeah, this is the job that pays for the Disney trip and this is the job that pays for SeaWorld and
Right.
yeah, anything. I mean, everything worked out really well.
No. Yeah, that's true. I would think I did talk about in the last episode, the holidays and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Was that hard for you to have to be gone?
Well, yeah, I missed a lot, of course, especially in the beginning. You're working. We rotated backwards, rotated midnights, afternoons, and days. Every 28 days we rotated, and then things started to get better when we went to 12-hour shifts. And fortunately for me, my parents had a house in my, where I was patrolling most of the time, and
Yeah.
I could see you guys
When we were younger.
when you were
Yeah.
young, when your mom would take you up there and I can meet up with you guys and spend a little bit of time and then have to go do what I got to do. But that's that's just part of the job. And like I said, at the end you get a pension and you're happy,
Right.
basically. So it wasn't so bad missing. I mean, and everybody sacrifices with jobs, every job, yeah, the firemen get to sleep at night, but that's a little jabbing.
Oh, yeah.
Like
They're gonna come
I
back
said,
at
I stood in the wrong line. I said that already,
you. Yeah, they're good. They're gonna come back at you now.
right?
We're gonna have like a little thing going back and forth on this podcast. But I think the reality is, right, like no relationships. I know I speak a lot about the struggles that I've had here and there or that we have had here and there. But one thing that I stress more than anything is the fact that we're still super connected. Even though I'm an adult now, I think we still have a really, really strong bond.
Yeah.
And I've heard you openly say a few times that like not everybody that you work with has that bond with their children. And so I know for us, and spoke about this in a previous episode as well, but I know for us, I think at least from my perspective, one of the things that really always helped us come back to a good relationship is sports.
Yeah.
So whether it be me playing sports or like going and watching sport, I'm a huge football fan. I think everybody knows that. I'm a huge Bears fan, but a lot of that stems from you. A huge Cubs fan, but that's all from like our connection to that, I think is what has always kind of kept us really strong.
Right. And then bring it back around when I described some coworkers that lived as cops.
Mm.
I did not.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought that,
There's a
when
good
when the
connection.
last day comes and the door shuts,
Right.
there's nothing there. There's nothing, you don't go back. Yes, it's a family, and I have lifelong brothers that I love to death, but I also knew and prioritized even back then when I coached you guys in softball and when we did things,
Yeah.
like going up to South Dakota and I mean,
Yeah.
I always thought and knew that it's about. And so tremendously relationship after the fact that, I'm the dad that's your dad. I'm not the dad that's a cop.
Yeah.
I'm your dad.
Right.
That was that.
Yeah. Do you think it's beneficial for police officers now? So one thing that I believe is beneficial is that there should be more communication, age appropriate communication. But like if a police officer has a bad day, I think it's fair to say that they could come home. They don't have to share what they saw, but say, hey, I need a few minutes to decompress. I had a bad day. It's right per
Yeah.
se. It's like my career. Do you think that's something fair? To
Absolutely. And as time goes on and people like you and people realize that there's some stuff that, happens to policemen everywhere. Like when I went to Kentucky with you,
yeah.
I I heard so many stories that I said, wait a minute, I did it, I happened to me,
Yeah.
or this or that. And yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's tough.
It is tough. It is tough. Well, and mental health for you
That's what I meant.
wasn't a thing,
Right.
right? Like
Oh no,
you
that wasn't even
grew up, just kidding.
me.
Yeah, right. But your career when you were policing wasn't so like mental health friendly.
No, as a matter of fact, you were targeted as a person
Weak,
that couldn't
right?
handle it.
Yeah,
Weak.
weak.
You can't handle it. And I think, I've always been that way. I've always bottled it up, or I've never say anything. And I don't know if it's a special thing that you have or that you do, but I think I always knew that this is my job, and I really want to be good at this job, or I want to, be good at being a father and at this job. So I have to you just keep going forward.
Yeah.
You don't have time to reflect and worry about other things. You just got to worry about what's happening to you and taking care of people and serving the public and
Yeah.
taking care of your family. And you just keep moving forward. You have to do that. And I think, I still feel that way. Like you never,
You're not the most open to emotion though.
no.
But you also weren't open to us when we were kids with like you were just really tough. Like remember when my finger was like hanging off
Yeah.
and you said
put a
you don't
Band-Aid on
have
it.
to go to the emergency room and there was a
Rub,
gaping hole, but that's fine.
rub some grass on it.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what I'm saying, right? Like
That is true.
there was sometimes for children of first responders. Now I will say like it's pros and cons. I'm so grateful for that because as I've grown older, I do think that it's helped me tenfold in a lot of ways. And then there's times too where I'm like, like I hate being sick because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm sick and I can't miss work because I'm sick. And, and that all stems from growing up. Be sick. You can't be hurt.
That's right.
And, but you can be. You can
Right,
be.
right.
So, but I think that's a great point. Do you feel more open now that you have me in this mental health world for first responders? Like, do you feel a little bit more open to recognizing some of those
Yeah.
things?
When I went to
Yeah, Kentucky.
we and I was in those groups. You realize like, wow, this is people need this, and it's really a good thing. It's really it's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And now you hear more and more about it, and mental health it's a real deal.
Yeah.
It's not a joke, and it doesn't show weakness. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And I know some old timers that just deal with it, and they don't say it to anybody because they still have the old time, it's just the way it is. Don't worry about me.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
Do you have any favorite memories from being a police officer?
oh boy,
I mean,
a lot of
just
good
your,
situations. A
yeah.
lot of, the little guy ran away from his house. No, he wasn't little. He was a teenager, and I told him that there's nobody in this world. I sat him down and I talked to his mom before I told him this, but I said, there's nobody in this world that gives a shit about you
Mm-hmm.
but your parents.
Yeah.
That kid ended up becoming a cop.
Oh, I didn't remember this. Didn't he invite you
He did. He
to
did.
his graduation, right?
Yes,
From the
yes,
academy?
yes. And he became a cop. And he always thanked me. I mean, that was a good feeling. Like he always thanked me profusely about, thanks for being tough on me and saying like it is, because that's the way it is,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and things like that. Just good situations where, there's so many I can't even remember. 29 years of stuff that
Yeah.
makes you smile when you think about it. Like, oh yeah, I remember, CPR and this guy and he lived, or this and that, and things that,
For sure.
good things. Yeah.
Awesome. Is there any parenting advice that you would want to pass down to others who are first responders?
I would say that my girls turned out good. So I would say, I would tell you that it's okay to be strict. It's okay. You don't have to be their friends. It's okay to, you're not doing them any favors by helping them through everything.
Right.
You gotta let them and discipline them and
Yeah.
let them hang once in a while. And because if you bail them out of everything and do everything for them, and patty cake them all the time, they have a very difficult time at the end.
Yeah.
At the end of whatever in their life, that their adulthood. And so I think,
You could still have, it sounds like what you're saying is you can still have that, you should still have that ability to parent, right? Like
exactly,
to just parent. I mean, I think it all comes with balance.
within reason,
Right. Yeah.
everything,
Yeah. Yeah.
everything within reason.
Within reason. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I might have been a little hard on you. I know I was. And I think you might have
Yeah.
described the situation going away to college, and then you didn't like it there, and you came back, and I said some nasty things, but
Yeah.
I was like, damn it, I don't want her. I
I
want her to
know
be
now
better
that it
than,
was all fear,
oh,
right? Like I know now completely that your fear was driving this emotional reaction
right,
of like you can't come home because you're going to be a failure.
right,
So I get that, but I think what for me as like a therapist, right? What I have to recognize is that not every child gets to this point of realizing that.
right,
And that's why sometimes with first responders, we have to understand that our words do matter when we talk to our kids, right?
right,
So we can't be, there's balance. There has to be balance for sure.
right.
Absolutely. Anything else you want to share or any thoughts, anything in general?
No, I guess, well, maybe a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
What I want to say is that how honored I am to be part of your guys' podcast,
Thank you.
and how proud I am of you and your doctorate's degree after I thought you were going to be a nothing. And
Wait, I do want to share something
oh boy,
for the whole
oh
world.
geez,
So this man told me that if I graduate with every single degree that I would get a truck. That I would get his truck verbatim. Then he bought a new truck. He didn't say which truck I would get.
right.
So from my understanding, it would just be passed to the new one. I have yet to actually get that truck, but I did buy my own.
You
So
did.
I guess that's
And I probably
that.
owe you 3 trucks.
The invoice is sitting in my email, still waiting to be sent, but we're gonna get there one day. I'm just kidding. Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, I was so happy, and I thought it was motivation, and then I'm like, oh geez,
Motivation,
she did
parenting
it.
101. If you motivate your child to get something like that, you gotta follow
Gotta
through.
follow through. Yeah, well now I don't know.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah,
see.
yeah. We'll see. One day I'll get the truck. I'll get the truck. But anyway,
But I'm proud of you, and I'm proud of what you've made of yourself, and
thank you.
proud of the all of my girls
Yeah.
and family how it turned out, and
Yes. Brittany and Katie are rocking it.
every
Yeah.
I get compliments all the time from all my friends, like, "Oh, your girls," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's my job. That was my job, is raising these girls to be better than I was, and they all 3 of them are."
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you again for coming on today. I know this isn't easy. It's a little bit new to do, but also for allowing me to take this path in my career because I know it's not easy probably to hear me. You know what I mean? I use our lives to educate others,
Yeah,
and to teach them things. And so I just greatly appreciate that. And everybody knows that you're my best friend, though. If people know me, they know that. So that's something that I always stay true to. And I'm just thankful that we have this. Happy Father's Day,
thank you.
because it's going to air either right before or right after. So happy Father's Day. He's going to Canada fishing. He's
Yes, I
still doing his coping.
am.
He's still doing his coping. And so, I mean, honestly, we're so thankful that we had my dad on today. And like I said, Jennifer's going to be on with her dad in the future as well. But always as a reminder that when the call hits home, Jennifer and I are going to be here for you. So thank you guys for listening today, and we'll see you next episode.